What do you do when you wake up in the middle of your life and realize you are completely lost? Hello. Good evening. Or maybe it's already late at night where you are. Welcome to the Still Point. If you're new here, thank you for finding us. And if you subscribed, you're part of a quiet community now. People who think, who question, who seek. Sometimes I wonder about the lives on the other side of this screen. The cities, the small towns, the different corners of the world where you might be listening. The stories that brought you here. If you ever feel moved, the comments section is there. A quiet place to leave a thought, a moment, a trace of where you are. This is your refuge. For the next hour, the noise stops. The scrolling ends. You don't have to do anything. Just be here. You're safe. Let's begin. Nel mezzo del cammino di nostra vita. In the middle of the journey of our life. Midway upon the journey. Not at the beginning, when everything is possibility and hope. Not at the end, when wisdom has already arrived. But in the middle. In the confusion. In the crisis. In the dark wood where you suddenly realize you have lost the path. This is where Dante begins. Not in heaven. Not even in hell. But in a forest. A selva oscura. A dark wood. Lost. Confused. Afraid. Midway through his life, 35 years old, the exact midpoint of the biblical lifespan, and completely, utterly lost. You know this place. Maybe you are in this place right now. The place where the path you have been following suddenly disappears. Where the certainties you built your life upon crumble. Where you look around and nothing makes sense anymore. Where you realize with terrible clarity that you are not where you thought you would be. Not who you thought you would become. Not living the life you imagined. The dark wood. We all enter it eventually. Usually around the middle of life, though it can come at any age. The moment when the trajectory you are on, the career, the relationship, the identity, the belief system suddenly reveals itself as insufficient. As not enough. As leading nowhere you actually want to go. Dante describes it with devastating precision. I cannot readily say how I entered there. I was so full of sleep at the moment I left the true way. This is crucial. He did not make a dramatic wrong turn. He did not consciously choose to get lost. He simply drifted. Sleepwalked. Moved through life on autopilot until suddenly he woke up and realized he was completely lost in a dark wood with no idea how he got there. How many of us live this way? Moving through days and years half asleep. Following paths we never consciously chose. Living according to scripts written by family, culture, circumstance. And then one day we wake up, through crisis, through loss, through the grinding dissatisfaction that finally becomes impossible to ignore, and we are in the dark wood. And the wood is dark. Dante uses the word oscura, obscure, shadowy, confusing. Not just physically dark, but existentially dark. Morally dark. Spiritually dark. A place where you cannot see clearly. Cannot distinguish truth from illusion. Cannot find the path forward or the path back. Just darkness. Just confusion. Just fear. He tries to escape. Sees a mountain in the distance, lit by the sun. Thinks there is the way out. There is salvation. I will climb toward that light. This is what we all try first, is it not? When we realize we are lost, we look for the quick escape, the shortcut, the way to bypass the darkness and get straight to the light. But 3 beasts block his path. A leopard, the sin of malice, of deliberate wrongdoing. A lion, the sin of violence, of uncontrolled aggression. A she-wolf, the sin of incontinence, of giving into every appetite and desire. These are not just Dante's personal demons. These are the fundamental human failings, the patterns that keep us trapped, the compulsions we cannot overcome through willpower alone. And no matter how hard he tries, he cannot get past them, cannot force his way up the mountain, cannot escape the dark wood through his own effort. This is the first great lesson, the thing that everyone in the dark wood must learn. You cannot think your way out, cannot will your way out, cannot climb directly toward the light. The beasts will always block you. Your own patterns will always defeat you. So what do you do when you are lost in the dark wood and every path forward is blocked? When you realize you cannot save yourself through your own cleverness or effort or determination, you need a guide. You need help. You need to admit that you do not know the way. And this is when Virgil appears, the great Roman poet, dead for 13 centuries but somehow present here in the dark wood. Sent by Beatrice, Dante's idealized love, now in heaven, to guide him. But Virgil does not offer to lead him up the mountain toward the light. That path is blocked. Instead, he offers something terrifying. You must go by another way. A longer way. A harder way. You must descend before you can ascend. You must go down into hell itself before you can climb toward paradise. This is the shocking proposal, the radical prescription for the soul lost in the dark wood. Not escape, not bypass, not finding a clever shortcut, but descent, going deeper into the darkness, facing what you have been avoiding, entering hell itself, not as punishment but as passage, as the only way through. And Dante, terrified, hesitating, almost refusing, finally accepts, because Virgil represents reason, represents human wisdom, represents the best that the classical world achieved without revelation. And reason tells him there is no way around this. There is no shortcut. If you want to reach the light, you must first descend into darkness. You must see clearly what you have been living in denial of. You must face the consequences of every choice, every pattern, every sleepwalking year. This is not what you wanted to hear when you entered the dark wood. You wanted rescue. You wanted someone to show you the easy path out. You wanted the quick fix, the simple answer, the technique that would make everything okay without having to actually change anything fundamental. But Virgil offers something else. Offers the truth that no one wants but everyone lost in the dark wood eventually needs. You must go through it. You must descend. You must face what you have been running from. There is no other way. And standing at the gates of hell, Dante reads the terrible inscription, "Abandon every hope, ye who enter here. Lasciate omni speranza, voi siec intrate." This seems like the worst possible instruction. When you are already lost, already in crisis, already barely holding on, abandon hope? Surrender the one thing keeping you going? But Virgil understands something profound. The hope that must be abandoned is not hope itself. It is false hope. The hope that you can fix this without changing. The hope that you can return to who you were before the dark wood. The hope that there is a way to avoid the descent, to skip the hard part, to get to paradise without going through hell. That hope must be abandoned, because that hope is what keeps you stuck. Keeps you trying to climb directly toward the light while the beasts block your path. Keeps you living in denial of what must be faced. Keeps you sleepwalking instead of waking up to the reality of where you actually are. So you stand here now, at the threshold, in the dark wood behind you, the gates of hell before you, the inscription warning you to abandon false hope. And you have a choice. You can refuse the descent, can try once more to find a shortcut, can retreat back into the comfortable numbness that got you lost in the first place. Or you can accept Virgil's guidance, can acknowledge that you are lost beyond your own ability to find the way, can take the first step into the descent, not because you want to, not because it makes sense, but because you finally understand that there is no other path, that the way out is through, that you must descend before you can ascend. This is where your journey begins, not in hope, not in certainty, not in confidence that everything will be okay, but in the dark wood, in confusion, in the terrifying recognition that you are lost and that the only way forward is down. Dante wrote this in exile, banished from Florence, his beloved city. Everything he had built, his political career, his social standing, his home, stripped away. He was literally and metaphorically in the dark wood, lost, displaced, unsure if he would ever find his way back to anything resembling the life he once knew. And in that darkness, that exile, that profound disorientation, he wrote the greatest journey poem in Western literature. Not by escaping the dark wood, but by going through it, by descending, by facing everything he feared, by allowing the journey to transform him. The Divine Comedy is not called divine because it is about God. It is called comedy because it ends in joy, in resolution, in paradise. But it begins here, in the dark wood, in hell, in the descent. And the joy at the end is only possible because of the descent. The paradise is only reached by those willing to go through hell. You are in your dark wood now. Maybe it is loss. Maybe it is failure. Maybe it is the slow accumulation of years lived according to someone else's plan. Maybe it is crisis. Maybe it is just the terrible realization that this is not the life you wanted, not the person you meant to become. And you have been trying to escape, trying to find the quick way out, trying to climb directly towards some imagined light. But the beasts keep blocking you. Your patterns keep defeating you. Your own mind keeps sabotaging your attempts at change. So here is Virgil's offer, extended across 7 centuries. Stop trying to escape. Stop looking for the shortcut. Accept the descent. Let me guide you through what you have been avoiding. Let me show you the structure of your own hell, not as punishment but as revelation. Not as condemnation but as the necessary passage toward transformation. The path is long. 9 circles of hell to descend through. 7 terraces of purgatory to climb. 9 spheres of paradise to ascend. This is not a weekend workshop. This is not a quick fix. This is the work of a lifetime. The work of transformation. The work of actually becoming who you are meant to be instead of who you have been sleepwalking as. But you do not have to do it alone. Virgil is here. Reason is here. Human wisdom is here. And beyond Virgil, though you cannot see her yet, Beatrice is there. Divine love is there. Grace is there. The forces that want you to complete this journey, that are calling you into this dark wood precisely so you can find the way through it. So take the first step. Cross the threshold. Abandon the false hope that you can fix this without changing. Abandon the delusion that you can return to who you were. Abandon the fantasy of the easy path. And accept what is offered instead. A guide, a path, a structure, a journey through the darkness that leads, impossibly, miraculously, to light. Not around the darkness, not bypassing the pain, but through it, all the way through it, until you emerge on the other side transformed. This is the invitation. This is the beginning. This is the dark wood where every true journey starts. Not in clarity, but in confusion. Not in strength, but in the admission of being lost. Not in certainty, but in the terrifying freedom of finally admitting you do not know the way. Nel mezzo del cammino nostra vita. In the middle of the journey of our life. This is where you are. This is where everyone is at some point. Lost in the dark wood, unable to find the straight path, surrounded by beasts and shadows and confusion. But you are not alone. Virgil is here. The descent is beginning. And though you cannot see it yet, cannot imagine it from where you stand now, paradise is waiting. Not as reward for being perfect, but as the natural conclusion of the journey for those willing to descend, to face, to transform. The wood is dark. The way is hard. But the journey has begun. And that beginning, that first step into the descent, that abandonment of false hope in exchange for the difficult truth, that is already transformation. That is already the path. Rest now in this recognition. Rest in the dark wood. Rest in being lost. Because being lost is not failure. Being lost is the beginning. Being lost is what makes the journey necessary. Being lost is what allows you, finally, to be found. The gates are open. Virgil is waiting. The descent is calling. And you are ready. Not because you are strong, not because you are certain, but because you are finally willing to admit you are lost. And that admission is the first step toward finding the way. Welcome to the dark wood. Welcome to the beginning. Welcome to the journey that will take you through hell and purgatory to paradise. Not because you deserve it, but because you are willing to make the descent. The path is long, but it begins here. Now, in the middle of the journey, in the dark wood, in the moment of being profoundly, terrifyingly, beautifully lost. And from this lostness, everything else becomes possible. You have passed through the gates. You have abandoned the false hope of shortcuts and easy escapes. You have accepted Virgil's guidance. And now you descend, down into the structure of your own darkness, down into the consequences of every sleepwalking choice, down into hell itself. But this is not the hell of popular imagination, not flames and pitchforks and demons randomly torturing souls. This is something far more terrifying and far more true. This is the hell of perfect justice. The hell where every soul receives exactly what it chose in life. Where every pattern finds its logical conclusion. Where every refusal to change becomes permanent. Dante structures hell as 9 descending circles, each deeper than the last, each containing those who chose a particular kind of turning away from love, from truth, from their own highest nature. And the descent through these circles is not arbitrary. It is a journey through the anatomy of human failing, a map of how souls lose themselves, a revelation of what you have been doing to yourself all along. The first circle you encounter is limbo, not a place of punishment but a place of absence. Here dwell the virtuous pagans, those who lived good lives but died without the grace of revelation. Virgil himself resides here. This is his eternal home. And what makes it hell is not suffering but incompleteness. These souls achieved everything human wisdom could achieve, but they remain forever on the threshold of something greater they can glimpse but never enter. This is the hell of those who did everything right by human standards but never opened to something beyond the human, who lived good lives, moral lives, rational lives, but never surrendered to mystery, never let go of control, never allowed transformation. They are not punished. They simply remain exactly as they are, forever. And that permanence of incompleteness is itself a kind of suffering. As you descend deeper, the circles reveal the consequences of desire turned destructive. Lust, gluttony, greed, anger. Each circle shows what happens when a natural human impulse becomes all-consuming, when it ceases to be part of a balanced life and becomes instead an identity, a prison, a hell. The lustful are blown about by endless winds, never resting, never finding peace. Because lust in life was the refusal to commit, to choose, to allow desire to deepen into love. So in death they experience the logical conclusion, eternal restlessness, eternal movement without direction, eternal desire without satisfaction. The gluttonous lie in freezing mud, pelted by filthy rain. In life they consumed without gratitude, took without appreciating, filled themselves without ever being satisfied. So now they lie in waste, in the residue of consumption, unable to move, unable to escape what they created through their endless taking. Do you see the pattern? This is not arbitrary punishment imposed from outside. This is the inner logic of each pattern revealing itself. Each circle shows what you become when a particular human tendency is allowed to run unchecked, when it becomes your whole identity, when you refuse to transform it. And you descend deeper still. Past anger, those who spent life in rage now eternally fighting in a swamp. Past heresy, those who denied the soul now trapped in burning tombs, denied the light they denied in life. Each circle is a revelation. Each shows you what happens when you refuse to change, when you cling to a pattern, when you make an identity out of what should have been just a passing phase. But the deepest circles are reserved for something worse than passion run wild. They are reserved for the sins of cold calculation, of deliberate betrayal, of choosing to harm others not from overwhelming emotion but from careful, rational self-interest. Violence occupies the 7th circle, and it is divided into 3 rounds. Violence against others, those who harm their neighbors now boil in rivers of blood. Violence against self, those who destroyed their own lives now transformed into twisted trees, forever denied the human form they rejected. Violence against God and nature, those who refuse the fundamental order of existence now trapped in a desert of burning sand under a rain of fire. And below violence, even deeper, are the circles of fraud. The eighth circle contains 10 ditches, each holding a different kind of deceiver. Seducers, flatterers, corrupt officials, hypocrites, thieves, false counselors, sowers of discord, each experiencing the consequence of using intelligence not in service of truth but in service of manipulation. The hypocrites walk in circles wearing cloaks that appear golden but are actually lead, so heavy they can barely move. In life they wore masks of virtue while acting from vice. So now they wear the weight of their own deception, unable to remove it, unable to rest. The thieves are bitten by serpents and transformed, losing their human shape, becoming monstrous, then returning to human form only to be bitten again. In life they stole others' property, violated boundaries, took what was not theirs. So now they cannot maintain their own boundaries, cannot keep even their own form stable. Experience forever what they inflicted, the violation of what should be inviolate. And at the very bottom of the eighth circle are those who sowed discord, who divided communities, who set people against each other for their own gain. A demon with a sword endlessly cuts them apart, and they heal only to be cut again, forever experiencing the division they created, forever torn by the very weapon they wielded against others. But even this is not the bottom. Even fraud with its cold manipulation is not the worst thing a human can become. There is one more circle, the ninth, the final, the frozen lake at the very center of hell. Here are the traitors, those who betrayed the bonds that should be most sacred. Traitors to family, traitors to country, traitors to guests. And at the very center, trapped in ice up to their chests, the worst of all, traitors to benefactors. Those who betrayed the very people who helped them, who showed them kindness, who trusted them. And why is this the worst sin? Why is betrayal placed below even violence and fraud? Because betrayal is the complete rejection of relationship, the complete turning away from connection. It is choosing isolation so completely that you will destroy even those who love you. It is the final refusal of love itself. And the punishment, if we can call it that, is ice. Frozen immobility, complete isolation. Each traitor locked in ice, unable to move, unable to connect, unable to warm themselves through contact with another. They chose isolation through betrayal, so they receive isolation absolute, eternal, frozen. At the very center of this frozen lake, trapped in ice, is Satan himself. Not a figure of fire and chaos as popular imagination depicts, but ice, coldness, the absolute absence of love. 3 faces weeping frozen tears. 6 wings beating uselessly, creating the cold wind that keeps hell frozen. And in his 3 mouths, he chews the worst traitors, Judas who betrayed Christ, Brutus and Cassius who betrayed Caesar. This is the bottom, the absolute nadir, the point furthest from God, from love, from warmth, from connection. And it is not fire but ice, not chaos but frozen order, not movement but absolute stillness. The end point of every choice to turn away from love, to betray connection, to choose isolation. And here is the terrible revelation that Dante offers. This is not a place God created to punish you. This is the place you create through your own choices. Each circle, each punishment, each frozen or burning or twisted soul, these are the logical consequences of patterns chosen and never transformed, of impulses indulged until they became identity, of turning away from love until the turning became permanent. Hell is not imposed from outside. Hell is what you become when you refuse to change, when you cling to patterns that diminish you, when you choose isolation over connection, deception over truth, betrayal over loyalty, violence over peace, consumption over gratitude. But you are not trapped here. That is the crucial difference between you and the souls you are observing. You are descending through hell with Virgil as your guide. You are witnessing these consequences, learning from them, seeing clearly what each pattern leads to when allowed to run its course. And this seeing is itself transformative. Because when you truly see the consequences of your patterns, when you understand where each tendency leads if never transformed, when you witness the hell that each refusal to change creates, you become able to choose differently. This is why the descent is necessary, not as punishment, but as education, as revelation, as the clear seeing that makes transformation possible. You cannot change what you do not acknowledge, cannot transform what you refuse to see, cannot heal what you deny exists. The journey through hell is the journey of acknowledgement, of looking clearly at every pattern, every tendency, every way you have turned away from your own highest nature, not to condemn yourself, not to wallow in guilt, but to see clearly, to understand consequences, to recognize that every choice creates a trajectory, and some trajectories lead to frozen isolation while others lead to warmth and connection and light. Dante makes this journey in a single night. From the evening of Good Friday to the morning of Easter Saturday, the descent through all 9 circles happens in darkness, in the long night of the soul, in the deep acknowledgement of everything you have been avoiding. And you are in this night now, this long dark night of seeing clearly, of acknowledging, of witnessing the consequences of patterns you have been running, of recognizing where each tendency leads if never transformed. It is not comfortable. It is not easy. The descent through hell never is. But it is necessary, because on the other side of this acknowledgement, on the other side of this clear seeing, lies the possibility of climbing, of ascending, of transformation. But first, the descent must be complete. You must reach the very bottom, the frozen lake, the center of hell, the point of maximum isolation and coldness. Because only from the absolute bottom can you begin to climb. Only when you have seen clearly where every unexamined pattern leads can you choose to transform them. And at the bottom, something remarkable happens. Virgil leads Dante down the body of Satan himself, down through the ice. And then they turn. They reverse direction. They begin climbing down Satan's legs, but because they have passed the center of the earth, down is now up. The descent becomes ascent. The journey to the bottom becomes the beginning of the journey upward. This is the pivot point. This is the moment of reversal. This is where the descent completes itself and transformation becomes possible. Not before. Not by avoiding the descent. Not by refusing to see, but by going all the way down, all the way through, to the very center, to the frozen heart of isolation and betrayal and turning away from love. And then turning, reversing, beginning to climb, beginning to move toward warmth instead of coldness, toward connection instead of isolation, toward love instead of its absence. You are approaching this pivot point now, this moment of reversal. You have descended through the circles, have witnessed the consequences, have seen clearly where each pattern leads, have acknowledged the ways you have turned away from your own highest nature. And now comes the moment of choice, the moment of turning, not away from what you have seen that would just be more denial, more avoidance, more circling in the same patterns, but through it, using it, allowing the clear seeing to become the catalyst for transformation. The night is long. The descent has been hard. The seeing has been painful. But you have done it. You have made the journey. You have acknowledged. You have witnessed. You have gone to the bottom. And from the bottom, the only way is up. The descent is complete. The reversal is at hand. The climb is about to begin. Rest now in this knowledge. Rest at the bottom. Rest in the completion of the descent. Because tomorrow, or the next moment, or whenever you are ready, the ascent will begin. But for now, rest. You have descended. You have seen. You have acknowledged. And that itself is the beginning of transformation. That itself is the first movement toward light. The frozen lake holds you, but it will not hold you forever. The ice is the consequence of patterns, but you are not pattern. You are consciousness. You are choice. You are the possibility of transformation. And transformation begins here, at the bottom, in the acknowledgement, in the clear seeing, in the completion of the descent. Rest now. The reversal is coming. The climb will begin. But for now, rest in the darkness. Rest in the acknowledgement. Rest in the bottom. The descent is complete. And from completion comes the possibility of beginning again, of climbing, of ascending toward light. Rest. The journey continues. But first, rest. You have reversed. At the frozen center of hell, climbing down the body of Satan himself, you pass through the pivot point where down became up, where descent transformed into ascent. And now you emerge. Not into light, not yet, but into air, into possibility, into the recognition that the journey is no longer about going deeper into darkness, but about climbing toward light. Dante describes this emergence with stunning imagery, climbing through a narrow passage, following the sound of a stream until suddenly they see stars again. The stars. Lustel. The same word that will in each of the three parts of the divinecomedy. Inferno ends with stars. Purgatorio ends with stars. Paradiso ends with stars. Because stars represent orientation, direction, the possibility of navigation. And after the darkness of hell, seeing stars again is seeing hope again. But you are not in paradise. You are at the base of a mountain. Mount Purgatorio, rising from the ocean in the southern hemisphere, exactly opposite Jerusalem. A mountain that exists in no geography but the geography of the soul. A mountain you must climb, not because you are being punished, but because you are being purified, because transformation requires effort. requires will, requires the active choice to ascend. This is the crucial difference between hell and purgatory. In hell, the souls are trapped in the consequences of patterns they refuse to change. They are frozen in their choices, permanent, unable to transform. But in purgatory, everyone is moving. Everyone is climbing. Everyone is changing. The suffering here is not the suffering of damnation, but the suffering of transformation. The pain of becoming different than you were. And this pain is chosen. That is what makes it bearable. That is what makes it sacred. In hell, the souls would escape their suffering if they could, but cannot. In purgatory, the souls could stop their suffering, but will not, because they understand that the pain is temporary, that it is purposeful, that it is the fire that purifies, the weight that strengthens, the difficulty that transforms. The mountain has 7 terraces, 7 levels to climb, each corresponding to one of the 7 deadly sins. But here the sins are not frozen into identity. They are being worked through, transformed, released. Each terrace is a workshop of purification where souls actively engage with the patterns that diminish them in life and consciously, deliberately choose to change. You begin at the base, and immediately you encounter something unexpected, an angel. The angel of humility, who marks your forehead with 7 P's, P for peccatum, for sin, for the 7 patterns that must be purified before you can enter paradise. This marking is not condemnation. It is acknowledgement. It is the honest recognition of what needs to change. And as you climb each terrace, as you work through each pattern, 1 P will be erased. 1 burden will be lifted. 1 transformation will be completed. The first terrace is pride, and the souls here carry enormous stones on their backs, bent double, unable to stand upright. In life, they elevated themselves above others, believed themselves superior, refused the humility that allows genuine connection. So now they are literally brought low, forced to bow, to see the ground, to recognize their fundamental equality with all other beings. But this is not eternal. This is not hell's frozen punishment. This is temporary purgation. They carry the stones willingly, understanding that this weight is teaching them that the very difficulty of the burden is transforming their souls. That when they have learned humility thoroughly enough, deeply enough, truly enough, the stone will fall away and they will climb to the next terrace. And carved into the rock face of this terrace are images, examples of humility and pride. Mary accepting the Annunciation with humble willingness. David dancing before the ark without concern for his dignity. And examples of pride destroyed, Lucifer falling, the Tower of Babel collapsing, Arachne transformed into a spider for challenging the gods. These images are lessons, reminders, teachers showing the souls what they are learning to become and what they are learning to release. On the second terrace, envy is purged, and here the souls have their eyes sewn shut with wire. In life, they looked at others with envy, could not see another's good fortune without pain, could not celebrate another's success without resentment. So now they cannot see it all, are forced to rely on others, to ask for help, to recognize that they are part of a community, not competitors in a race. And they call out to each other, offer support, share stories, comfort one another in the darkness. The very pattern that isolated them in life, the envy that separated them from genuine connection, is being transformed into its opposite, into mutual support, into recognition that another's gain is not your loss, that there is enough light for everyone, that joy can be shared without being diminished. The third terrace purges wrath, and here the souls walk through acrid smoke so thick they cannot see. In life, anger blinded them, made them unable to see clearly, unable to perceive nuance, unable to recognize the humanity of those they raged against. So now they experience that blindness literally, walk through it, learn to navigate despite it, learn to let it pass without being consumed by it. And as they walk, they meditate on examples of gentleness, on patience, on responding to harm with love rather than retaliation. They are not being told anger is wrong. They are learning to transform it, to feel the energy of anger without being possessed by it, to use its fire for justice rather than destruction, to let it pass through them like smoke rather than building it into identity. At the center of the mountain, the fourth terrace, sits sloth. And here is where the pattern becomes more subtle. Because sloth is not just laziness. It is spiritual torpor. It is the failure to love enough, to care enough, to engage with life fully. It is the sin of withholding yourself, of going through the motions, of never quite committing to transformation. So on this terrace, the souls run, constantly, urgently, calling out examples of zealous love, of passionate engagement, of throwing yourself fully into life and love and the work of transformation. They are learning that tepid half-commitment is its own kind of hell, that you must choose, must engage, must run toward love with everything you have. And this running is exhausting, is difficult, but it is also exhilarating, because for the first time, perhaps in their entire existence, they are fully committed, fully engaged, fully alive in the work of becoming. Above sloth, the pattern shifts. The lower terraces dealt with love misdirected, pride, envy, wrath, or love insufficient, sloth. But the upper terraces deal with love directed toward the wrong objects. Love that attaches to things that cannot ultimately satisfy. The fifth terrace purges avarice, greed, the love of possessions. And here the souls lie face down on the ground, unable to move, reciting psalms about detachment. In life they grasped, accumulated, believed that having more would make them more. So now they release. Let go. Learn that you are not what you own. That clutching diminishes you. That open hands receive more than closed fists. The sixth terrace purges gluttony. And the souls here are surrounded by trees heavy with fruit and streams of clear water, but they cannot reach them. They are learning the difference between hunger and appetite, between genuine need and compulsive consumption, between nourishment and filling the void. And they become thin, skeletal, not as punishment but as purification. They are learning what they actually need. Learning that most of their consumption in life was not about genuine hunger but about trying to fill a spiritual emptiness with material substance. Learning that the void can never be filled from outside. That satisfaction comes not from consuming but from being filled with something beyond consumption. And finally, the seventh terrace, lust, the misdirection of love toward fleeting physical pleasure. And here the souls walk through fire, actual flames that burn but do not consume, that purify without destroying, that hurt but heal. This is the final purification before paradise, the transformation of love from grasping to giving, from taking to offering, from using another for your own pleasure to genuinely seeing another and loving them for who they are. The fire burns away the compulsion, the desperation, the using, and what remains is love purified. Love that can finally enter paradise because it has learned to love without possessing. And as you climb through these terraces, as you witness these transformations, Virgil remains your guide. But something is changing. Virgil, who represents human reason, classical wisdom, the best that natural philosophy can achieve, is becoming less certain, less authoritative, because you are approaching the limits of what reason alone can teach. At the top of the mountain lies the earthly paradise, the Garden of Eden, the place of innocence before the fall. And here Virgil can go no further. His guidance has brought you from the dark wood through hell and up the mountain of purgatory. He has been the perfect guide for the journey of acknowledgement and purification. But he cannot enter paradise, cannot guide you into the realm of grace, cannot teach you what lies beyond human wisdom. And so he leaves. Simply, quietly, Dante turns and he is gone. And for the first time since the dark wood, Dante is alone, standing in the garden, having climbed from the frozen center of hell to the top of the mountain, having been marked and purified, having released pattern after pattern, having transformed. But he is not ready for paradise yet, because purification is not enough. You can release all the patterns, can climb all the terraces, can be purified of every misdirection of love, but you still need something more. You need a new guide, a new kind of guidance, not reason but revelation, not philosophy but grace. And this is when she appears, Beatrice, who died years before in Florence, who Dante loved from afar, who represents not human wisdom but divine love, not what you can achieve through effort but what is given as grace. She appears on the other side of the river that flows through Eden, and she does not comfort him, does not congratulate him on his journey. Instead, she rebukes him. She reminds him of how he turned away after her death, how he sought consolation in lesser things, how he wandered into the dark wood precisely because he forgot that divine love, was what he truly sought, how all his suffering was the consequence of turning from the highest love toward lower loves, how the entire journey was necessary because he refused the simple gift of grace and tried instead to find satisfaction in things that could never satisfy. And Dante weeps, breaks down completely, confesses. Not to Virgil, reason does not hear confession, but to Beatrice, to love, to grace. He acknowledges not just his patterns, but the fundamental turning away that made all the patterns possible. The refusal of love that created the need for all the lesser satisfactions. And Beatrice accepts his confession, tells him he must pass through two rivers, Lethe, which will wash away the memory of sin, and Euno, which will restore the memory of good. He must forget what diminished him and remember what elevated him. Must release the past's grip and reclaim his original nature. And after passing through these waters, he is ready. Finally ready. Not through his own effort, though effort was necessary. Not through his own wisdom, though wisdom was necessary. But through grace, through love, through the recognition that what he sought was always seeking him. That divine love was always there, always calling, always waiting for him to stop seeking elsewhere and simply receive. You are here now, at the top of the mountain, having climbed through acknowledgement and purification, having released pattern after pattern, having learned humility and community and patience and commitment and detachment and sufficiency and purified love. And Virgil, your reason, your human wisdom, can take you no further. You have reached the limits of what you can achieve through effort and understanding. You stand in the garden, ready for what comes next, ready for the guide who appears not through your seeking but as gift, ready for the ascent that is not climbing but being lifted, not achievement but grace. Rest here, in the garden, at the top of the mountain, having completed the climb but not yet begun the flight, having been purified but not yet transformed, having released but not yet received. This is the threshold between purgatory and paradise, between effort and grace, between what you can do and what must be given. And it is a sacred threshold, a holy pause, a moment of recognition that you have come as far as you can come on your own. And now you must wait, must be ready, must be open to receive what cannot be achieved. The stars are above you, the same stars that marked your emergence from hell, but you see them differently now, with purified vision, with eyes that have learned to see truly, with a heart that has learned to love rightly. And tomorrow, or the next moment, when you are ready, a new guide will appear. A new journey will begin. The ascent from the mountain into the heavens, from human achievement to divine gift, from climbing to flying. But for now, rest, in the garden, at the top, having climbed and been purified, ready but waiting, open but not grasping, prepared to receive what cannot be taken. The ascent has begun, but the ascent is not yet complete. Rest in this between place, this garden of preparation, this pause before paradise. Rest and be ready, for what comes next is grace. You stand in the garden, the earthly paradise, the place where humanity began before the fall, where innocence was whole, where love flowed freely, where there was no separation between human and divine, between desire and fulfillment, between longing and presence. This is not a place you could have reached through effort alone, not a destination you could have arrived at through climbing. You have climbed, yes. You have been purified through 7 terraces of transformation. You have released pattern after pattern. But the garden is not the reward for that work. The garden is grace, His gift, is what was always waiting once you became able to receive it. And now Virgil is gone, your guide through hell and purgatory, your companion of reason and human wisdom. He brought you as far as reason can bring anyone, to the threshold, to the edge of what can be achieved through understanding and effort. But he cannot cross this threshold with you, because what lies ahead requires a different kind of knowing, a different kind of guidance. You are alone for the first time since the dark wood, but this aloneness is different. In the dark wood you are lost. Here you are found. In the dark wood you are confused. Here you are clear. The aloneness is not abandonment. It is preparation. It is the necessary pause before what comes next. It is learning to stand in your own purified being, ready to receive what cannot be grasped. The garden is alive with beauty. Trees heavy with fruit. Flowers blooming in colors you have never seen. A river flowing with crystal clarity. Birds singing melodies that seem to speak directly to your soul. This is beauty not as decoration but as reality. Beauty is the actual nature of existence when seen with purified eyes. When experienced without the distortions of pride and envy and wrath and all the patterns you released on the mountain. And then you see the procession, moving through the garden with ceremonial slowness. 7 candlesticks of gold leading the way. 24 elders clothed in white. 4 creatures with 6 wings. A chariot drawn by a griffin, half eagle, half lion, divine and human nature united. And surrounding the chariot, dancing, singing, celebrating the theological virtues and cardinal virtues embodied as beautiful women. This is not random imagery. This is the structure of revelation, the way divine truth presents itself to human consciousness, not as abstract doctrine but as living symbol, as beauty that teaches, as procession that invites you to follow, as ceremony that transforms the one who witnesses it. And on the chariot, veiled in white, crowned with olive, clothed in the colors of living flame, Beatrice, the woman Dante loved in Florence, who died young, who he idealized and mourned, but who appears here not as human memory but as divine reality, as the embodiment of the love that guides souls to God, as grace personified, as the one who can lead where reason cannot follow. The procession stops. The moment has arrived. And Beatrice speaks. But she does not speak words of comfort, does not congratulate you on completing the journey, does not welcome you warmly into paradise. Instead, she speaks your name, speaks it with love, but also with judgment, with the clarity that only true love can bring. She reminds you of how you knew her in life, how her very presence elevated you, how loving her lifted you toward your highest nature, how in her living form she was already showing you the path to divine love. And then she reminds you of what happened after her death, how you turned away, how you sought consolation in lesser things, how you forgot that she was showing you not just herself, but what she pointed toward, the divine love that never dies. This is not cruelty. This is love's precision. Because you cannot enter paradise carrying false narratives about yourself. Cannot ascend while still believing you were just unlucky, just a victim of circumstance, just someone who got lost through no fault of your own. The garden demands honesty. Beatrice demands acknowledgement. Divine love requires you to see clearly not just your patterns, but the fundamental turning away that made all the patterns necessary. And you break. Completely. The defenses you maintained even through hell and purgatory, the subtle belief that you were fundamentally okay, that your struggles were not really your fault, that you were doing your best, all of it collapses. You see clearly. You see how you turned from the highest love toward lower loves. How you chose the temporary over the eternal. How you wandered into the dark wood not through accident but through 1,000 small choices to seek satisfaction in what could never satisfy. And you weep. Not the tears of self-pity. not the tears of shame that wants to hide, but the tears of genuine recognition, of honest acknowledgement, of seeing yourself clearly in the mirror of love's truth and recognizing both how far you fell and how much grace has carried you back. Beatrice accepts your tears, but she requires more. She requires confession, spoken acknowledgement, the willingness to name what you turn from and what you turn toward. To admit not just to yourself, but in the presence of love itself, how you betrayed your own highest nature, how you settled for less, how you forgot. This confession is not humiliation. It is liberation. Because what you can name, you can release. What you can acknowledge, you can transform. What you bring into the light of love's awareness can finally be healed. The patterns you released on the mountain were symptoms. This is addressing the cause, the fundamental orientation away from divine love that made all the other turnings possible. And after confession comes baptism, immersion in the rivers that flow through Eden. First Lethe, the river of forgetting. You are submerged in its waters. And as you emerge, the memory of your sins washes away. Not the knowledge of them, you still remember what you did. But the weight, the guilt, the identification with them, they become past, completed, released, no longer defining who you are. Then you know the river of remembering good. You drink its waters, and the memories of every moment of grace return. Every time you chose love, every instance of beauty that elevated you, every glimpse of your highest nature, these memories strengthen, become vivid, remind you that beneath all the patterns, beneath all the turnings away, there was always this, your fundamental goodness, your original nature, your essence that was never actually lost, only obscured. This is the preparation for paradise. This double movement, forgetting what diminished you, remembering what elevated you, releasing identification with sin, reclaiming identification with grace, becoming who you actually are beneath all the layers of pattern and habit and turning away. And now Beatrice looks at you differently, no longer with judgment, no longer with the severity that true love required to break through your defenses, but with the radiance of full acceptance. You have confessed. You have been baptized. You have remembered your true nature. And now you are ready for the ascent that is not climbing but flight. Ready for the journey not through your own effort but through grace's lifting. The garden reveals its final secret. It is not just a place. It is a state of being. It is what you become when purification is complete and confession is honest and forgetting releases and remembering restores. It is standing in your original innocence, not the innocence of never having fallen, but the deeper innocence of having fallen and risen, of having turned away and been turned back, of having forgotten and remembered. This is the threshold, the sacred pause between purgatory and paradise, between effort and grace, between what you did and what is done to you, between climbing and being carried. You stand in the garden, purified, confessed, baptized, remembered, ready. And Beatrice takes your hand, not as Virgil took your hand, a companion guiding you through danger, but as a beloved drawing you into love, as grace inviting you into gift, as divine wisdom leading you beyond all human wisdom into the realm where questions dissolve not because they are answered, but because they are transcended. You look up. The stars are there. Always the stars. But now they are not distant points of orientation. They are destinations. Places you will visit. Spheres you will ascend through. Each one a deeper revelation of divine love. Each one a closer approach to the source of all light. The garden has prepared you. The confession has cleared you. The rivers have transformed you. And now begins the journey that is unlike any journey you have taken before. Not through your strength, not through your understanding, not through your effort, but through surrender, through allowing, through the willingness to be carried by love itself into love's own heart. Rest here for a moment longer, in the garden, in the pause, in the threshold. Feel the completeness of preparation, the readiness, the purification that makes reception possible, the confession that opens space for grace, the baptism that washes clean and remembers true. You have climbed from hell's frozen center to Purgatorio's ascending terraces to this garden at the summit. You have been guided by reason as far as reason can guide. You have released patterns and purified tendencies and acknowledged the fundamental turning that made everything else necessary. You have wept and confessed and been washed and remembered. And now you stand ready, hand in Beatrice's hand, gaze turned upward, heart open, defenses dissolved, false narratives released, true nature remembered, ready to ascend not through climbing but through love's invitation, ready to enter not through achievement but through grace, ready to discover what lies beyond all that human effort can accomplish, the realm where divine love reveals itself directly to the soul prepared to receive it. The garden holds you. Beatrice waits with infinite patience. The stars shine above. And you are exactly where you need to be. Not lost, not confused, not alone in the wrong way, but held, known, loved, ready. Rest in this readiness. Rest in this garden. Rest in this threshold between effort and grace. Because what comes next cannot be achieved, can only be received, cannot be taken, can only be given, cannot be understood, can only be experienced. The garden teaches its final lesson: preparation is not the same as arrival. Readiness is not the same as fulfillment. But preparation makes arrival possible. Readiness makes fulfillment receivable. And you are prepared. You are ready. You are held in the garden of grace, waiting not with anxiety but with peaceful expectation, knowing that what comes next will come, not through your forcing, but through your allowing. Beatrice's hand in yours, the rivers flowing, the stars shining, the garden breathing, and you purified, confessed, baptized, remembered, standing in the threshold, ready to receive what cannot be earned, ready to enter what cannot be achieved, ready to ascend through love into love. Rest. Be ready. Allow. The garden holds you. Love waits. Paradise calls. And you are prepared to answer, not through effort, but through grace. The threshold is sacred. The pause is holy. The readiness is itself a kind of arrival. Rest here, in the garden, in grace, in love. You are ready, and that is enough. You ascend, but this is not climbing. This is not effort. This is being carried, being lifted, being drawn upward by love itself into spheres of increasing light, increasing beauty, increasing closeness to the source of all that is. Beatrice's hand in yours, her gaze turned upward, and you rise through the sphere of the moon, through Mercury, through Venus, each sphere a revelation, each level a deeper understanding of divine love's infinite expressions. Each ascent not away from earth but deeper into the truth that earth and heaven are not separate but interpenetrating realities. In the sphere of the moon you meet souls who broke their vows, and you expect punishment, expect diminishment, but instead you find joy, perfect joy, because even here, in what seems like the lowest heaven, these souls have found their proper place, their right relationship to divine love. They are not where the most perfected souls reside, but they are exactly where they belong. And in that belonging, there is complete peace. This is the first revelation of paradise. There is no envy here, no comparing, no wishing to be other than what you are. Each soul shines with its own light, receives divine love according to its capacity, and that capacity, whether small or vast, is filled completely. A cup holds less than an ocean, but a filled cup is as satisfied as a filled ocean. Each contains all it can contain. Each is complete. You ascend through spheres of increasing radiance. The sun, where theologians and philosophers shine with the light of understanding. Mars, where holy warriors blaze with sacrificial love. Jupiter, where just rulers form living words of divine justice in the sky. Saturn, where contemplatives rest in the stillness beyond activity. And in each sphere, Beatrice becomes more beautiful, not because she changes, but because your capacity to perceive beauty increases. Your eyes become more able to bear the light. Your soul becomes more able to receive the love that has been there all along, waiting for you to become capable of experiencing it. She explains this to you, tells you that divine love is like the sun, always shining with the same intensity. But whether you experience it as gentle warmth or blinding brilliance depends not on the sun but on your capacity to receive its light. Paradise is not different levels of divine love. It is different capacities to receive the one love that fills everything. And this changes everything, because it means paradise is not about being good enough to earn a place. It is about becoming capable of receiving what is already being given. It is about purification not as payment but as preparation, as increasing your capacity, as opening yourself more and more fully to the love that never stopped shining. You ascend beyond the spheres of planets, into the fixed stars, and here you are examined. Peter questions you on faith, James on hope, John on love, not to test whether you have earned entry, but to help you articulate what you have learned, to bring to consciousness what you have been experiencing, to name the transformation that has been happening all along. And you answer, not with borrowed doctrine, not with memorized catechism, but with lived truth, with understanding earned through descent and ascent, through hell and purgatory and the garden and these ascending spheres. You speak of faith as the substance of things hoped for, of hope as confident expectation of future good, of love as the fire that draws everything toward its source. And then you ascend beyond even the fixed stars, into the primal mobile, the first moved, the outermost sphere that moves all the others. And here you see something that stops all thought, all questions, all seeking. You see 9 rings of angels, 9 orders of pure intelligence, pure love, pure being, circling a single point of infinite light, so bright that no eye can look directly at it, so intense that it makes all other light seem like darkness. This is God, not as concept, not as doctrine, but as direct experience, as the point from which all existence emanates, the source from which all spheres descend, the love that moves the sun and stars. And the angels circle this point in ecstasy, in perpetual adoration, in the pure joy of being in right relationship to the source of being itself. And you understand, finally, completely, that the entire journey has been about this, about coming into right relationship with this source, about purifying your capacity to receive this light, about releasing everything that kept you from experiencing the love that was always there, always shining, always calling you home. But even this is not the end. Beatrice leads you to one final vision, the vision that completes the journey, the vision that reveals the structure of paradise itself, the celestial rose, the great white rose of infinite petals, each petal a saint, each soul a point of light, all arranged in perfect harmony, all facing the center, all receiving the light of divine love and reflecting it in their own unique way. And you see Mary at the highest point, the soul of greatest capacity, the one who received divine love most fully, not because she was better than others, but because she was most open, most receptive, most willing to let divine love do with her what it would. And her light is brightest, her joy most complete, her reflection of divine love most perfect. But even she is not the source. Even she receives. Even the highest saint is a moon reflecting the sun, a created light shining by the uncreated light. And this is the final humility, the final recognition, that even at the highest reach of paradise, we remain creatures receiving the gift of existence from the source that never stops giving. And now Beatrice takes her place in the rose. Her role as guide is complete. She has brought you from the garden through the spheres to this vision. And now she sits among the saints, radiant, complete, still loving you, still smiling at you, but no longer holding your hand, because you no longer need to be led. You are here. You have arrived. You have become capable of direct vision. And Bernard appears, the final guide, the contemplative saint who knows the way of mystical vision. And he directs your gaze, not to the saints, not to the rose itself, but through the rose, beyond the rose, to the light at the center, to the source, to God. And you look, you gaze, you allow yourself to be filled with light, and the light transforms you. You see 3 circles, 3 rings of light, same size, same radiance, but distinct. And in the second circle you see a human face, the face of Christ, divinity and humanity united, the eternal Word made flesh, the bridge between infinite and finite. And you strain to understand how humanity can be united with divinity, how the infinite can embrace the finite without destroying it, how two natures can be one person. Your mind reaches, struggles, tries to comprehend what is beyond comprehension. And then understanding comes, not as thought, not as concept, but as grace, as sudden gift, as lightning flash of recognition that bypasses the mind and illuminates the soul directly. You see, you understand, not how it works, but that it is, not the mechanics, but the reality, not the explanation, but the truth. And in that moment of recognition, your will and your desire, which have been pulling you in different directions your whole life, suddenly align, suddenly move together, suddenly turn in harmony like a wheel that spins without friction. Your individual will become one with the divine will, not through force, not through suppression of self, but through recognition that what you most deeply want and what divine love wants for you are the same thing. This is the final transformation, the completion of the journey, not annihilation of self, but perfection of self, not losing your will, but finding that your will, when fully purified, naturally desires what love desires, naturally moves as love moves, naturally participates in the great turning of all things toward their source. And Dante ends the vision here, ends the entire comedy with these words: the love that moves the sun and the other stars. L'amorce move il sole e l'altra stelle. Because this is the final truth, the ultimate reality, the answer to every question the journey raised. Love. Not love as emotion, not love as sentiment, but love as the fundamental force of the universe, as the power that holds all things in existence, as the will that desires the good of all beings, as the light that shines through everything, as the source and goal and means of all that is. You have journeyed from the dark with through hell and purgatory and paradise to this recognition that you are loved, that you have always been loved, that the entire journey was love's way of bringing you to the point where you could receive that love, where you could recognize it, where you could let it transform you. The descent through hell was love showing you the consequences of turning away. The ascent through purgatory was love purifying your capacity to receive. The garden was love preparing you for grace. And paradise is love revealing itself, not as distant deity, but as intimate presence, as the ground of your being, as what you are made of and made for. And now you rest, not in achievement, not in arrival at some final destination, but in recognition, in seeing clearly what has been true all along, that you are held in love, that you move within love, that love is what you are seeking because love is what is seeking you, that the entire journey home was love's way of bringing you home to yourself, to your deepest nature, to your eternal source. The rose continues to bloom, the light continues to shine, the love continues to move the sun and stars. And you are part of this great cosmic dance, not separate, not other, but participating, receiving, reflecting, being transformed by the light you behold. Rest now in this vision. Rest in this light. Rest in this love. Not as something you must maintain through effort. Not as something you might lose if you are not careful, but as what you are, as your true nature, as the reality that holds you even when you forget it holds you. The journey is complete, but completion is not ending. It is fulfillment. It is arriving at the place you have always been but could not see until you made the journey. It is coming home to find that home was never elsewhere. That love was never distant. That paradise was never a place you had to earn, but a reality you had to become capable of experiencing. And that capability has been built through every step. Every circle of hell that showed you what to release. Every terrace of purgatory that purified your capacity. Every sphere of paradise that expanded your ability to receive. All of it was preparation. All of it was love's patient work of making you able to bear the light, to receive the gift, to recognize the truth. You are that truth now, not separate from it, not seeking it, but being it, living it, reflecting it. You are the love that moves the stars, not as grandiose claim, but as simple recognition. You are made of love, made by love, made for love, and love moves through you as it moves through everything. Rest in this. Rest as this. Rest knowing this. The rose blooms. The light shines. The love moves. And you are held, known, loved, complete. The divine comedy ends, but the reality it points to never ends. The love that Dante saw continues to shine, continues to move, continues to draw all things toward itself. And you are part of that movement, part of that drawing, part of that eternal return to source. Sleep now, rest now, be now, in the light, in the love, in the recognition that you have always been held by what you were seeking, that the journey was love's embrace, that paradise is not elsewhere but here. Now, in this moment of recognition, in this awareness of being loved, the stars shine, the rose blooms, the love moves, and you rest, complete, whole, home. Lamerche Muvael Soliel Altrastel. The love that moves the sun and the other stars moves you too. Moves in you. Moves as you. Rest in this truth. Rest as this truth. Rest. You are home. The journey is complete. You've traveled far tonight. Through shadows, through light, through depths most never see. Your mind has done its work. You can rest now. This is the still point. Your anchor in the sea of thought. A place you can always return to whenever the world becomes too loud. Thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting this space, for trusting yourself. Sleep well. Good night.